Welcome to the fourth installment of How to Successfully Write a Literary Criticism. At this point, if you've been following the instructions that I've been trying to share with you, you've framed the paper appropriately, you've identified the appropriate scholarly sources to help you make sense of all this information and organized it in a meaningful fashion through both your general and your detailed outlines. This step, we're going to talk about actually crafting the text. In other words, writing your rough draft and ultimately crafting your final paper. And ironically, most students think that this is the most daunting step, but if you followed the instructions and guidelines that I've given you up to this point, this is an absolute quick slam dunk. So hopefully the video will follow that as well and be short, succinct, and to the point. Now, if you recall back to our discussion about the detailed outline, when you had a Roman numeral, you had a subpoint and then a sub-subpoint underneath it. So those numbers 1 and 2. And please go back and refer to the general and detailed outlines that you printed up before. And actually the ones that you've constructed for your individual paper. The last level of specificity are ultimately your topic sentences that you're going to be using to craft a paragraph. Now, an argument that I advanced last video that I'd like to reassert is that a good paragraph is going to have approximately 5 or 6 substantial sentences that are going to set out an argument, defend it, and then explain it. Now, I like to refer to this particular process as the ICE method, I-C-E. And the acronym ICE basically means that you're going to advance an idea, I, or your topic sentence, which you already have, C, which stands for citation, an expert citation to back up your idea, because going into most writing and research projects, you're not an expert on that particular individual or idea, so you're providing an expert opinion to back up your assertion. Or, frankly, you are basically making an assertion that you have found through the research. You make your assertion, then you back it up with that expert citation. The last letter of the acronym E is to explain it, paraphrase it, put it into your own words. So the ICE method, you have an idea, a topic sentence. C, you have a citation, some expert opinion or information that you've gotten that's going to give credibility to your idea. And E, an explanation where you spend 3 or 4 sentences explaining, paraphrasing, justifying, defending the assertion that you're advancing in that particular paragraph. So if the topic sentence is one sentence of your paragraph, the citation itself is 1, potentially 2 sentences in length, and your explanation is 3 or 4 sentences in length. At a bare minimum, again, you're looking at approximately 5 to 7 sentences for an individual paragraph, and that's at an absolute bare minimum. If you go back to the numbers we discussed in the last video, that's going to give you a research paper that is going to be meaty and substantial and well balanced. Now, let's talk about the C component of the ICE method, the citation. Basically what we're referring to is a concept known as, in MLA, parenthetical documentation. Parenthetical, parentheses, documentation, you're verifying. What you're doing with parenthetical documentation is you are taking the sources that you have found, that originally were your annotated bibliography, which will eventually become your works cited page, and you are citing those experts within the paper. Now, students then often run into the question when it is appropriate to use parenthetical citation and to cite actual authors within the text and the body of your paper itself. And there are a couple of fundamental rules for that. First, obviously, if you are using a direct quotation, a direct citation, and actually pulling words from a different individual, from an expert, it is absolutely mandatory for you to put it in quotation marks, put the author's name in parentheses afterwards, and to parenthetically document that you use that person's absolute specific words, that you are explicitly using the language that they use. So if you're using a direct quotation, a direct citation, it's important for you to use parenthetical doc. But it's also crucial and mandatory for you to use parenthetical documentation if you are paraphrasing the idea of another author that is specific and unique. And here's the threshold. If you're writing a research paper on Bertolt Brecht, for example, going into the paper, you're not an expert on Bertolt Brecht. It would lead you to believe that any fact that you discover about Brecht you should put in parenthetical, you should cite and use parenthetical documentation. But the threshold of appropriateness really is, does every well-educated individual reading or that has knowledge about this author or idea, would they know this idea? Would they know this factor information? If the answer is yes, you probably don't need to include parenthetical documentation. For example, let's go back to Brecht. Anyone who's researched Bertolt Brecht will know that he pioneered the concept known as epic theater. So it's not crucial for you to mention epic theater and then cite it and use parenthetical documentation as a part of it. However, if the paraphrased material that you're using is not something that you're finding in virtually every individual expert's paper, book, article about this author, it's usually appropriate for you to use parenthetical documentation and cite that author's idea. And the general rule, the basic fundamental rule is, when in doubt, cite. So now you're constructing a paragraph for one of your points within the paper itself in your rough draft. One of the things that professors will look for, that employers will look for, is, are you synthesizing the ideas of a variety of authors within each of your paragraphs? What I look for specifically is in subpoint Roman numeral 1A1, again going back to the idea of scene painting and periactoi. Within the paper, or within that point, maybe subpoint A, do I see citations Smith, page 22, Smith, page 25, Smith, page 27? Moving on to the next paragraph, do I see a citation Jones, page 3, Jones, page 7, Jones, page 9? Well, I've got two issues with that. First of all, basically you're using the very beginning of every text that you're reading instead of reading the entire article or the text to get a full understanding of what the author is trying to convey. And number two, there is no synthesis. What a good paper will do within each of the major points and even subpoints is to integrate those different authors. So as I'm reading through a paper, what I hope to see is within a paragraph or a series of paragraphs, parenthetical documentation that might say Smith, page 22, Jones, page 203, Vickers, page 222. I'm looking for a variety of sources from a variety of authors, because what that's doing is pulling together a variety of expert opinion to help you advance a new argument. And remember, even though these professors, even though these writers have an academic background and a factual base in what they're trying to convey and put down in their papers and their articles, everybody has their biases. So they're all going to have their individual interpretations of what all the facts mean. So, good luck with constructing this rough draft and this final paper. Now, the last thing that I want to add is, as you construct your rough draft, you've got about a 2-week window, 3-week window from when the rough draft is due to when you have to turn in your final paper. You are not bound to the content at any time in your rough draft to what is going to appear in your final paper, just as you are not bound from your outlines to the draft itself. It's just making you plan in advance. And again, I'll use another metaphor. It's just like cooking. A good cook will prep the food. A good soup, for example, will simmer and allow the flavors to blend. A good wine will cure and will ferment and have a more complex flavor. By writing and spending extra time allowing this for you to mull over in your subconscious, or even more importantly, to use the resources that the school has provided for you, will help you construct a better paper. And those resources include things like going to the writing center, submitting your paper to Smart Thinking. You are paying valuable tuition dollars to be a part of this institution. Make sure that you're using those free tools that the campus is offering you as a student at this institution. Submit your paper to Smart Thinking, get some feedback, incorporate those changes, take it over to the writing center, sit down with someone, talk about either the content or the form, the direction you're going, the arguments you're making, and then go back and revisit the paper to make it a better final draft when you turn it in at the end of the process. Now, the last installment of this video series will specifically address those elements that you need to be attentive to when you're turning in the final paper, and they have a lot to do with form, not actually the arguments that you're creating, the text, or the research. It's going to be the final packaging. So this takes us to the end of the writing stage and how you should be conceptualizing all of this. So good luck, and as always, if you have any questions about the process, don't hesitate to email me or give me a call. Good luck.